everyone, John Henry here, slingshotfutures.com, and welcome to the daily futures and crypto market outlook for tomorrow's trading. Tomorrow being the 27th of the month, wrapping up September. Pretty okay day. I mean, it really didn't get a whole lot of movement. We had a lot of good movement on some specific markets, but across the board, it was relatively range-bound by the end of the day. Basically one of those days that has a lot of movement, but not a whole lot accomplished. Especially don't look at the S&P because you might fall asleep. Now, looking across the board here, we have a lot of other markets that, of course, have done pretty good in terms of movement. But before we jump on in, as always, make sure to swing on over to slingshotfutures.com, scroll down, and click on the Join the Daily Outlook newsletter. From there, you'll be able to sign up for our email list so you'll be notified every time one of these videos comes out. Along with that, in the newsletter itself, we go over different stocks, different cryptocurrencies, all kinds of fun stuff inside of there, along with different announcements and all of that. So make sure you sign up for that so you don't miss anything going forward. And then also click on the live trade room subscription and trial info so you can sign up for a 3-day trial with us in the live trade room. It's a way that you can sit down with us for a few days, see our screens, get an inside look in terms of how everything works, the trades that we're looking at, the different types of opportunities that arise throughout the day. It's a great way to get a feel for how everything works and basically what we're doing day in and day out. So if you haven't done so already, make sure to sign up for that free 3-day trial as well. Now, taking a look over at the euro, first of all, the euro has had some pretty good movement off of the highs. We dipped down pretty aggressively. Earlier in the morning, we had more of a range, not really a whole lot going on. They probed the lows, they tried popping back up, the sellers held that monthly resistance, that's at 19,100, and fell right back down and continued down very aggressively. This would also be potentially considered a spike into a kind of a channel or a wedge. You could draw that up a couple different ways, and we're catching a nice little lift off of that. Now, this is a little bit of a double-sided argument because right now this is a potential nice selling opportunity around 18,630, working our way lower back towards the bottom. Now, we do have a couple levels of support in the way, 18,375, and then of course the low end where we found a bunch of support before, but we have a very strong bear trend that is likely going to try to hold it down for one more leg. The double-sided argument is when we look at a bigger time frame. So if we switch over to something like the 60-minute chart, this is where we start running into an area of interest. Not only in the bigger picture do we have the channel lows, but we also have horizontal support and resistance. We have the 61.8% of the major swing. We have 3 major levels stacking up on one another, and to make it even better, we also have this area as potentially exhausted, meaning they put too much effort to the downside and now they may have to overcorrect. So if the market stays inside of the lower band of the channel, this could easily pop all the way back up to the highs of that channel top. And even then, it might go through there. So we have a little bit of a double-sided argument in that we have a situation that on the faster time frame, the 5-minute chart, we have a short. But on the 60-minute chart, we have a potential long. So you have to kind of pick your battles a little bit. Now, the 60-minute chart and the bigger time frames generally tend to have the emphasis, the bias, if you will. And this turn higher that we're getting right now could be that turning point for buyers to start jumping in, looking at that 375 for that monster rally to the upside. But in the short term, until the buyers really prove something, we have to stick with the sell side. So just kind of keep that in mind. You have both arguments taking place right now, with the buy side being on the bigger picture for the 60-minute chart and the 5-minute chart, and the faster for the overnight session, more heavy, a little bit more bearish. Now, that could just mean that they're trying to get a poke down to the lows again, finish the sell side off, retest major support for the larger time frame, so they can rocket the market back up from there. But either way, in the short term, we have to stick with bearish going into the overnight session. So looking for continued selling opportunities on the way down, 18,630, holding really nicely so far. Over on gold, we have a really nice looking bear wedge working down throughout most of the morning and going into the afternoon session and probably into the evening session. We've got just a consistent good bearishness. Now, the way that this is forming did exhaust itself a little bit on the low side, meaning that we're probably going to get a correction up. But instead of getting a correction up and breaking through the highs, you normally anticipate those basically equidistance breaking the opposite side. They broke down by this much. They should overcorrect by that much, and it didn't. That's a big, big clue. So not only did we get the exhaustion to the downside where the sellers put a lot of emphasis on selling, but when it came time to come back to the highs and kind of offset that blow off on the bottom on the highs, They never showed up, meaning that the sellers are still very aggressive. So that could easily lead into more downside continuation. The big problem that we run into with that downside continuation is massive monthly support. We have monthly support at 97.6 and 97, these big thick lines coming through here. So we've got a lot of stuff in the way. That basically tells me that although I would really like to sell in this context with the sellers holding the inside after a big blow off on the bottom, I can't do it right now. We're way too close to support. It's too much in the way. We need to wait for a better price. Better pricing comes in at around 1300, since it's floating around right in the middle, that big 1300 level. But along with that, we also have those previous swing lows. We have daily resistance just underneath that at 1.5. And we do also have the obvious top of the wedge working its way lower. So the more things we can get stacked up in the same place, especially if we can line them up with the highs of that wedge, we are starting to get a little bit of a cross point where if we measure the highs to the lows, that looks about 50%. We also have the top of the wedge. We have horizontal support and resistance. That's more the area that I want to look for. So around 1300.5 right now is the decision area that I'm looking for a little bit of more selling pressure at a better price. Over on crude oil, just a monster wedge, not really doing a whole lot. Lots of movement. We had a shallow move to the downside, caught a little bit of a floor, tried making a run up, that failed, tried making a run down, they tried bouncing it up, they failed, tried bouncing it up, they failed, it dipped down into a new low, and now we're just stuck with this 51.99 kind of cutting through price. That was the major support through here, and now the major resistance through here at around that 51.99 to 52. So with that wedge, we are cycling off of the lows of the wedge. We have that rising up, and we have yet to really reach out to test the highs. And that's what I'm looking for right now. I want to see them pop up and tap the highs of that wedge, so then we can look for some selling pressure off of there to continue that cyclical rotation that we're getting here on crude. Right now, we're just kind of in the middle of it, and although we do have 51.99, sort of cutting through the middle of price, that is a short-term area of support and resistance, but I would really like to see the highs of that wedge come into play next up. We have a lot of other resistance. If we look backward a little bit, that is the same place that we had that floor put in earlier in the day. They did treat that with a decent amount of respect, so if we can get that to line up with the top of the wedge, we may have a really strong 1-2 punch, depending on how long they want to take to get up there. So I am looking for the short side. They may just do it without me, but I really have to be looking for a better price to sell on crude. I don't want to be selling this close to the middle, this close to the bottom of the wedge. There's just too much stuff in the way. Once again, I know kind of a carbon copy story of gold, but it is a very similar situation in that there's just too much in the way for me to want to sell right now. I need to see some better prices. And then over on the S&P, the range-bound mess that it is, we did take a little bit of a pop higher into 2,500. That big 2,500 level acted as a stiff level of resistance and popped the market right back down again to a low, forming a range that we are stuck with now. The range low looks best at around 93.5 up to 99, with a deviation breakout on the highs and lows for them trying to probe both sides. Now, if we zoom out a little bit, we can see that this is kind of the same area that's been in play for quite a while. They held the lows pretty aggressively through here. They also held it as a high. They held the highs through here pretty aggressively. Everything is lining up with this same range that we've seen since kind of the mid-September area forming its way through. So at the moment in time that we're kind of stuck with right now, I think we have to approach the S&P as more of a range. So with the range that we see the S&P kind of floating around in, really any deviation or attempted breakout of either side is going to be assumed to be a failure. The overall trend definitely to the upside, especially if you zoom out to something like a 15-minute chart or further, it's pretty apparent that we have a monster bull trend. The one big thing that we have for the buyers is the potential for that wedge bottom to be coming into play. They overshot the lows. We could be looking for that same type of argument on the highs, and that could easily lead us into some major price changes to the upside, to new record highs, back towards 25.10 if they can push up there. But for right now, we're just stuck in this range, and with the overall emphasis on the bigger picture looking bullish, I would rather be looking to buy the lows than anything else, and just kind of waiting to see if we can get a dip down to that 93.5 for some potential buying pressure from there. So that's going to do it for the outlook on the future side of things. Looking at the economic calendar for tomorrow, we do have quite a bit of stuff. 8:30 tomorrow morning, we have the core durable goods orders month over month for August, forecasted at 0.2%. The previous was 0.6%. At 10 o'clock, we have the pending home sales month over month for August, forecasted at a negative 0.5%. The previous was a negative 0.8%. At 10:30, of course, tomorrow being Wednesday, we have the crude oil inventories. They are forecasted at a build of 3.422 million. The previous was 4.591 million. And then we start getting into some Canadian news. At 11:45 tomorrow, going into the lunchtime session, we have the Bank of Canada Governor Paulos speaking. And then at 12:55, we have the Bank of Canada Governor Paulos speaking again. I don't know if they're different topics or if he's recording one and posting the other one, but we have two different speeches at the two different times from the same person. So that isn't your calendar acting wrong. He has two times on the time slot right now to hit the microphone at 11:45 and 12:55 tomorrow for the Canadian side of things. So if you're trading any Canadian markets, be a little bit careful. Might be a little bit of an interesting one. Now, taking a look at the cryptocurrency side of things, the cryptos, we've got a lot of stuff going on, but the big thing that we're seeing right now is simply the fact that Bitcoin is continuing its rally. If we zoom out a little bit, we had that big dip down to 3,000, and it's never looked back. Just a persistent rally to the upside that is not letting off the gas pedal, and we are now finally adding a little bit more conviction, a little wind in the sails to the upside with this pop higher. To me, this was nothing more than a trap on the highs. Sellers attempting to drive the market down. They couldn't even break that previous swing low, failed. And now the sellers are starting to think that they are on the wrong side of things, as if that wasn't obvious enough. This is the area where sellers, if they can't get out at break even, and their break even point, arguably, they may have sold all the way down here, maybe sold a little more inside here, sold some more here, they may have already gotten out at break even, depending on how many times they scaled in. But if they are still stuck, or, you know how it always goes, they probably sold the worst point, which is going to be here, and then maybe another one here, they may not be out at break even. And if this starts popping above these highs that we formed just before 4,000, and especially if we can start rallying above 4,100 to 4,200 and break away, we have a very strong case for the buy side on Bitcoin to push back up towards the 5,000s and finish that job off that we left behind not too long ago, right? We came very close to 5,000. They missed it by just a little bit, and we've been pulling back since. This is, to me, at least, like we've been saying, nothing more than just a big sale. And, well, if you were paying attention, you got that blue light sale special, and now we're just waiting for that continuation to the upside. Bitcoin Cash is looking pretty good. We still haven't had that nice dip down to, below 300s, but they came close. They popped down to 300 back on the 15th, and they haven't really come back. We're putting in a floor seemingly right around 400. I mean, you can pretty much bracket 400, even 375. This area is seemingly picking up a lot of steam. Every time the market comes back there, it's snapped right back up again, other than that one blow off earlier in the month. So with that big level of support and the fact that we are continuing to grind higher in a nice little bull channel working its way up, everything is looking nice and strong for Bitcoin Cash. Just looking for a little more continuation to the upside. If they want to give us another sale pricing, I would love it. Sub 300s I would be a big fan of. But for now, we are still looking pretty strong into the upside. So pullbacks right now looking at around 440s-ish would give us a nice area of interest, or even just the channel lows, depending on when we can line those up. That might be at 420, it might be at 450. It all depends on when the market makes its way over there. But for right now, that's kind of the idea that we're looking at. And, well, right now we're just floating in the middle, so I think we need to wait just a little bit for Bitcoin Cash until we start finding some better prices. Over on Ethereum also showing a really good lift to the upside. We are putting in a little bit of a ceiling. This is the same place that we struggled with before, just ahead of 300. That was also a major level of support before it broke down. So it's not a surprise to see the market having a little bit of a hard time here. Major level of support usually turns into a major level of resistance. If Ethereum can break back above 300 and get up to probably 310 to 315, we should be all systems go for continuation to the upside and for the buyers to really swarm in. But until we get away from this this kind of cluster that we have of support and resistance, we're going to have a hard time wanting to do anything. So I think it's best to sit on hands for Ethereum and wait for a little bit more confirmation. Break above that 300, get to 310, up to 320 or so, and then look to buy that dip for continuation to the upside. But until then, I'm going to be sitting on hands. Litecoin with a nice pop higher as well. Everything catching a nice little lift here, of course. With that double bottom failure, they tried tapping the lows, they failed, held the inside of it, and then it's been off to the races ever since. Really good bullish continuation of the upside, holding very nicely. If we draw this up as a channel, we are at the highs of it. Now, that does make me a little bit nervous. We may be a little expensive right now, and that could just mean that profit taking is likely up here and that buyers may want to hold off a little bit to allow for a slight little pullback. Major area of support or resistance that stands out is kind of serpentining its way through price already, right back here, right? Now, we can narrow this down even a little bit further. We have this wick high. We have a nice little ceiling that was put inside there that held nicely inside there. Going further back, it held nicely there. Arguably, they even front-ran it a little bit right there. So I think a big level of interest, notably around $50, is where we're looking to pick up the next buying opportunity. If we can get a dip down towards that $50 mark, buying into it, that's basically a half-off sale. Remember, Litecoin fell off of nearly 100, and we're sitting at 50 right now. It dipped as low as 33. So we are on still a beautiful sale price at 50% off on Litecoin for the next potential rally to the upside. Now going on to the altcoins a little bit here. NEO catching a beautiful rally to the upside. They dipped underneath 20 for a little while. 20 was the big line in the sand for a really long time. And once they started dipping underneath that, you can see the amount of support that came in around 20. Huge resistance, huge support all the way through here. We have now, I mean, more than enough. Substantially broke above 20, all the way up to almost 30. This is more than enough to prove that the buyers are here and they're likely here to stay. What I'm looking for is this little wedge that's forming on NEO, and I would like to see a breakout for continuation and another leg to the upside towards 32. My major objective right now on NEO is up to 31 or 32 in that area. It just depends on where you can get in. A nice breakout above the highs, a fake break below the lows. It would be better. You'd get some nice pricing on that, but overall we are forming a little bit of a pennant or a wedge and looking for a continued breakout to the upside on NEO. And then the counterpart to NEO, gas. Gas is what NEO uses for transactions, very similar to how Ethereum uses Ether or Gwei or however you pronounce that. This is the same thing. So gas and NEO are very similar to one another. We already had a beautiful bounce on gas back to the upside, and really what I'm looking for here is a slightly deeper pullback. Now, it's a little bit counterintuitive because NEO, we're looking for continuation to the upside, but we are kind of forming the same thing here. Right? It's just a little bit uglier. I would really prefer to buy gas a little further down. Really, I would love to see them come back to that previous swing high around 0.005. Would be beautiful for a potential bull bounce. But with NEO really pinning to the highs and forming a wedge, potentially looking to break out sooner than later, we might not get that pullback for a while. So if we get even a half of a pullback, right, that kind of 6 1/4 area looks like it is acting as a level of resistance. We might be able to find that as a level of support. And if it takes a while, we may even be able to line that up with a wedge bottom. Overall, though, looking for the bull side here on the gas as well, but I would really prefer to catch gas at a slightly better price. And then finally, Trust. Trust versus Bitcoin, that's Trust Plus, symbol TRUST. It had a monster breakout to the upside. At one point, I think it was up 80 or so %. Just a huge breakaway move. Really, a lot of buyers are likely going to be taking profit on this. It's a very cheap market, so they're probably looking for some better pricing. The obvious pricing that I would be looking for, wedge highs coming in as wedge lows, could easily be the next level of support around 28 to 2,900. And if we can get a slightly deeper pullback, that first big breakout candle retesting that zone along with the previous swing high at around 24 to 2,300 is the next big level of interest for potential opportunity and a bounce back up. So we've got a lot of different interesting setups that are going on and a lot of potential things that we can keep our eyes on and open for. Now it's just a matter of if the market wants to cooperate and give us a way in. So that's going to do it for the outlook overall. Like we always say, it doesn't matter what market you're approaching, whether it's cryptocurrency, stocks, options, you name it. Make that plan, trade that plan, follow the rules, and you'll be A-okay. Until next time, we'll see y'all then.